Chairman of the SLBC, Shri P.P. Sengupta, the Convener, Shri Mohanta, Additional Chief Secretary Finance, Thiru N. Muruganandam, Regional Director RBI, Thiru S.M.N. Swami, Chief General Manager NABARD, Shri Venkata Krishna, the many senior officers and key staff of the government of Tamil Nadu, my friends, fellow bankers, good morning and thank you for attending this 172nd State Level Bankers Committee and for inviting me and allowing me to speak here. I won't say much because I have to leave about 1:30 for a different meeting with the Chief Minister and I don't want to delay the agenda, but I'll just say maybe a few things. I think we are in a very unprecedented situation as far as the global economy is concerned. The Chairman touched on it a bit. One of the things I track from my days in the bond markets is what they call the 10s-2s, which is the spread between the 10-year bond and the US 10-year Treasury and the 2-year. The 10s-2s is normally a positive number because obviously the yield curve is upward sloping. You get more return for greater duration. Normally the inversion indicates an imminent recession. But the last time the 10s-2s was about -3/4 of points, about 75 basis points as it is today, was I think 1981 when there was the whole Volcker induced trying to break stagflation. We're certainly not in stagflation now, at least most of the world. So it's very curious that we have such a steeply inverted curve when we're still with relatively high inflation, with relatively high liquidity, and with relatively strong market valuations. So it's a very unprecedented time. I'll just leave it at that. As far as the Indian economy goes, I share the optimism of the speakers ahead of me that though we are tied to the global economy at some level, we are recovering from a very bad pandemic and so we have a low base effect. And B, we were already in some other structural problems because of major transformations and events. So I think we are finally coming out of the medium-term implications of those events, and so I think it will be fairly resilient. In Tamil Nadu, I'm comfortable that generally we tend to do slightly better, even when the Indian economy had a negative growth of 7 to 8% in the depth of COVID. Tamil Nadu had a real growth of about 1.6 or 1.7. So I think our numbers, both in terms of the economic data as well as the revenue data, suggests we'll do slightly better. Of course, our government, we've now been in office about 18 months. The results have been very good. They have not come easy. We have probably implemented more reform in a year and a half than in any 10 years of any government of any party, at least as far as the finance, audit, checks and balances, control, liquidity, approval processes, monitoring, execution, and with global help. Just day before yesterday, we finished the 3rd round of interactions this year with a big team from the IMF who are helping us even further strengthen our processes. It's a basic truism that you cannot get better results unless you do different things. You cannot do the same things again and again and expect to get better results. So we are driving change at almost breakneck speed as far as governments are concerned. Thanks to the continuous support of the Chief Minister, we're able to achieve this kind of unprecedented change. But both for you and for us, I would say we have a problem. The problem is that to really be efficient, to really improve the impact of our spending, of our programs, of our schemes, we need much better information and we need much better execution. It's not the intent that matters in the end. Intent is important, money is important, funds are important, but we need information and we need execution capability. One of the biggest failures of democracy is that the few who benefit disproportionately, often unfairly, sometimes illegally, have access to the seats of power, have access to the ears of the people who run the administration, the government, and the many who lose out are left behind. In some sense, that's true in banking as well. I've been going over the statistics here, and while the performance in terms of percentages of credit extension are really good, the performance in terms of number of accounts are much, much, much worse, maybe at half the rate of new credit extension in terms of the targets for 22-23. So I reiterate what I've been saying in different ways in previous meetings, that really our goal is to reach the bottom of the pyramid, the people who don't naturally have access, who of course, I'm not asking you to throw away money, but I'm saying, in the schemes to find the real beneficiaries who can immediately get an uplift. And that is economically efficient, because what we saw in monetary policy easing from 2008 till 2020 was that effectively, no matter how much liquidity you pumped in the system, you could not drive growth because the money was going to people who are not going to spend it in productive ways. The money was going to people who are driving up asset prices in stock, in real estate, in art, in gold, in Bitcoin. And so you had unprecedented liquidity at a global level, $4 to $5 trillion pre-pandemic and another $2 or $3 trillion post-pandemic. $8 trillion you couldn't drive growth, you couldn't even see any inflation. Till fiscal stimulus started, then all of a sudden we started seeing inflation and all kinds of other problems. So the job of bankers is the same as the job of government, is to spread the wealth, is to get it to the people who can use it, who need it the most. And if we do that, we get major multiplier effects and immediate impact on the economy. I will say just a couple more things. The government is extremely keen on improving efficiency in every way. One of those is the way the government and its departments bank. Right now we have a hodgepodge. We have no idea which banks are operating, what accounts, for whom, when. We have massive turnover in the government administration. Officers change. The procedures for handoff when an officer left a post to the next officer had no explicit instructions around specifically handing over accounts and PD accounts and project accounts and so forth. We're going to be taking a look at that, and you should expect that within a few months we will develop much better protocols for within the government and how the government interacts with the banks. And we'd like to know the efficiency with which our funds are being utilized or managed or deposited or parked. I will second both the important suggestions of the Finance Secretary, because these are policy decisions of the government. We've been talking about it a long time. Maybe not in this exact way, but this is probably the 5th or 6th time we've talked about the importance of Tamil in frontline staff, in notices, in forms, in all communications, at ATMs. I remember doing this as early as June of 2021 when there was a different finance secretary. So you must have many communications by now. And I urge you to take this suggestion by the finance secretary today as kind of, the last reiteration. From now, if we were to see any violations, we would take it extremely adversely to the point of affecting our relationship. The second, I think, in the Chief Minister's vision of, nobody left behind and that all districts and all regions should get equal focus, then I also second the Finance Secretary's suggestion that we should try and rotate these SLBC meetings into other parts of the state. Let me just conclude on a personal note because it's now been about 6 or 7 SLBC meetings. I'm very pleased that after a long, successful career, both our convener and our chairman are due for retirement. I want to say something quite personal, but in my career, I had two kind of false retirements. And I was at Lehman Brothers, and it went through bankruptcy, and Nomura, the Japanese bank, bought Lehman Brothers. They offered me a package to say I declined it, and then they offered me as good or better a package to walk away. So I took kind of early retirement one time in 2008, and I thought I was done. I thought I'd been done with professional work and ready to go to public life. And then various twists and turns, I ended up having a second career with a big commercial bank, global bank, Standard Chartered Bank, from which I again took early retirement, which allowed me to keep my unvested stock and cash and all that in 2015 to come back to India and to public life. So I'm somewhat wistful of the notion of actual retirement because I've had 2 semi-retirements and come back. I only wish one day that I also get to retire like them because there's this old adage that politicians don't retire, they just die. And so, in the case of my own father, that's what happened. He passed away on a train within a week of being appointed minister. So, I hope that both the retirements of our convener and our chairman will set benchmarks for us in their happiness, in their good health, in their activities outside of their professional career, and we can all aspire to have such happy and healthy retirements, and I wish you both such good retirements. Thank you very much.